The power and the healing of animals and our relationships to them on the streets starts even when we are not supporting them together, right? I've come across numerous individuals who are on the streets who say, I don't even do as many drugs or don't drink as much because, one time I had a situation where I blacked out or I didn't know where I was and I lost my pet. And luckily, I found my pet and I swore to myself and to him I'd never do that again. That's incredible. That is super powerful.
Hello, and welcome to Give a Dog a Bone. I'm Genevieve Frederick, the founder of Feeding Pets of the Homeless. Find out more about our mission and the animals we've helped. Hear the stories of insiders, volunteers, and leaders about why we do what we do and how you can make a difference. It's all here on Give a Dog a Bone. Hello there, and welcome to Give a Dog a Bone. We have a special guest today, and she is the founder of PalsNPets. I would like her to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you started this wonderful, wonderful program. She is such a delight.
Hi, thank you so much, Genevieve. And I am honored to be here on your podcast, Give a Dog a Bone. What a beautiful, beautiful idea. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Iliana Belinc, and I am the founder and executive director of PalsNPets. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit currently based here in Los Angeles. And our mission is to increase shelter access for unhoused pet owners by supporting human shelters with essential pet programs in order to do so.
It is so wonderful. It's women like you that start organizations like this. They see a need and they go out there and embrace it. And it is such a delight. And I am just so honored to have you as a guest today. So why don't you tell us when you started the organization and a little bit about what inspired you?
Yeah, so legally, we incorporated PalsNPets in early 2018. So we're a fairly new organization, but what inspired me, I'd say, was back in 2016. And it was actually the first time I had recognized an unsheltered pet owner on the street with their pet. And at the time, I was living in Pasadena, and I saw across the street a man, which I later learned by the name of Ray, and he had this sign, and on his sign, it was a fairly large sign. He wrote a little bit about a story. He had a pit bull named Jane, and he wrote something along the lines as, my dog and I are here on the streets. We wish we could get into shelter, but they don't allow pets. It seems like I saved my dog, but my dog was who saved me. And so this caught my attention. And to be truly honest, when I first was seeing Ray with his dog Jane on the streets, I actually didn't have a positive perspective of this. And I just thought, gosh, life has got to be hard for him living on the streets. And then to have a dog, which is an extra responsibility, it's got to be that much harder. And as I was thinking this, watching Ray and Jane, I had seen a woman who was about to pass and didn't, and she ended up petting Jane, this cute little pit bull. I mean, who wouldn't? Pit bulls, they have these beautiful little square faces, and when they're just laying on their bellies with their chin on the ground and these gorgeous puppy eyes, They all do it, all dogs, but pit bulls, for some reason, have these really sultry, inviting eyes. And so she had stopped and pet Jane and ended up having a conversation with Ray, which, I could tell even from afar was very positive. And right at that moment, my whole perspective had changed. I just thought, what other positive things happen to a person on the street who has a pet? Because I did think, I wondered, if he didn't have Jane, would that woman have stopped and have that positive interaction with him? And so I got curious. I got really curious, and my thought was, what other positive things happen to unsheltered people on the streets who have pets? And I began doing my own personal research, as a lot of people in the sectors do. And anytime I would pass a person with a pet on the streets, I would stop. I would, if I was pulling off the freeway, I'd flip around and I would stop and I'd start talking with them. And one thing I really noticed is their pets' behavior and their energy and the calmness and the way they look at their owners. And, just a visual, I'm not a veterinarian, but just a visual health on, are they too thin? Are they too big? And, none of that, none of those negative, occurred to me. And you could just instantly tell this well balanced energy between an unsheltered person and their pets and the connection. And so that was very inviting and sparked my curiosity, along with getting to know a lot of commonalities amongst unsheltered people and their pets. And then I started, doing my own Google research, and you guys, Pets of the Homeless, was the first to pop up. And so, yeah, it was great.
It was, and we're just very thankful that you reached out to us. In fact, you came to our office and met our executive director, Renee. But tell us, I've been on your website, obviously. It's beautiful, great job. But I would like you to tell the audience a little bit about your grandfather and how he influenced your work.
Yeah, so my abuelito Carlos, my grandpa, had a big impression on my line of work. I didn't really know this at the time, when I first saw Ray and Jane, but as a young kid, me and my sisters and my parents would go visit my grandparents every weekend or every other weekend. They lived in a small little town, Tecate, in Mexico, which is a cute little border town. It's about an hour and a half east of Tijuana. And it was great growing up down there during the summers. It was all dirt roads. I mean, I was going to say back then, but it was only the 1980s. I hope I didn't give away my age, but they didn't have, it was so small and quaint. They didn't even have, indoor plumbing. We still used the outhouses, and we would do our laundry out on a rock, and we would get water from the wells, from rainwater. And it was great as a kid. We didn't have to take that many showers. So, and so when we would go visit, there were all these street dogs on the streets, right? Numerous. Today, I actually just visited about a month ago, and it's not the case anymore, which is really great to see. But around the mid 1980s, there was all these street dogs. People didn't treat dogs as companions, right? They could hardly feed their own children. And so when we would visit my grandfather, it was noticeable. He had numerous dogs, 10, 15, sometimes 20. And each and every time we would go visit, he'd have a new one, right, that he would rescue off the streets. And I wonder, which ones he decided to rescue and why. I wish I could have asked that question, as a kid. But I did ask him, abuelito, ¿por qué tienes tantos perros? Grandpa, why do you have so many dogs? Because it's not normal, right? And he would tell me when he was a young kid about my age, he was an orphan. And he told me a story. He says, back in the days when people used to ride horses, and if they would get in arguments, they would, do shootouts. And one day his mom was going to the store and got in between a crossfire and never came back. And his father was just never around. And so he was left with some family members who had kids of his own, and they couldn't care for another kid. And so he slept many nights on the streets with the street dogs. And he said it was the street dogs that saved him. And that's why he saved them back. And so, growing up with this, there's a lot of familiarity in my line of work, in my relationships with unsheltered pet owners and their pets and their relationships that I just naturally saw growing up with my grandfather. He had a lot of compassion and connection with his dogs and respect, but also with other pets, with birds. He loved parrots and nature, and humanity as well. He ended up being he was the general secretary of the labor union. So I remember many times people would come to the gate and knock on the gate, and all these dogs would start barking, and they're like, Don Carlos, do you have any work for us? And he'd either say, yeah, come on, let's go. Or, he would offer them money. And so I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to grow up, with my grandparents, both my grandma and grandparents in this type of environment. So, I think when I first saw Ray and Jane across the street, I always wondered prior to having this recognition of that, why did that catch my interest, right? Why did my perception change? Why did I have a negative view at first and then instantly switched over just at that moment when I saw that woman who stopped by? And it stems from my childhood growing up from my grandfather.
What a beautiful, beautiful story. I can see how he would influence you. When you first walked up, it probably didn't resonate that this was part of your DNA, really, that you would reach out to someone like that. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Brings tears to my eyes, actually. Ah,
Oh.
oh, okay. Well, my perception of the homeless changed over the years as well. I mean, I was, a white woman walking down the street with blinders on, and I realized that the homeless feel so isolated socially. They're outcasts of our society, which is so, so sad. But these animals bring such comfort. And you saw that with this gentleman and his dog on the street. And I'm sure you see it every day as you go to work, as we here in my office, my case managers and everyone that works here, we see that bond that is so, so strong. So tell me, that human animal bond. I mean, you kind of went into it. What you're doing now, are you seeing that same kind of interaction? And how are you, spreading that word? I know that you've got a book out. If you want to tell us about that as well, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So we do. We see this deep, powerful connection, the human animal bond. I saw it on the streets when I was doing my research, and more in depth and more in development while working within shelters with our sheltered residents, because we do have an opportunity to develop relationships on a daily basis with our sheltered pet owners and their pets. And this bond is such a deep, powerful, healing, and transformative to both humans and animals. I mean, I truly believe, as the Dalai Lama says, we each have a purpose on this earth, and we're here to contribute to the prosperity of the world, each in our own particular way, to ourselves and to each other, whether we're humans or we're animals. You know, we each have a purpose, and we have it to human to human, to human to animals to human. And we see this cycle in us and through us, and it's healing, and it's transformative. And so when I was on the streets, I noticed, I'm sure you've noticed, and I've learned even before my own experience, or that one experience with Ray and Jane, and then, you know, reading your websites or reading the book My Dog Eats First, or hearing from other similar organizations, that the power and the healing of animals and our relationships to them on the streets starts even when we are not supporting them together, right? I've come across numerous individuals who are on the streets who say, you know, I don't even do as many drugs or don't drink as much because, you know, one time I had a situation where I blacked out, or I didn't know where I was, and I lost my pet. And luckily, I found my pet, and I swore to myself and to him I'd never do that again. That's incredible. That is super powerful. Addictions and alcoholism is not an easy thing to change in an individual, right? And, you know, for them to not want to commit crimes, even when they're in need of something, and it would be easier because they don't want to go to jail because they feel that it wouldn't be fair to their pet. Their pet has done nothing wrong. Their pet has only shown them kindness and unconditional love, you know, got me curious to thinking, wow, you know, later I started learning, while I started really getting into the stories of our sheltered residents who spent many years out on the streets, that sometimes this pure love that they feel and receive and are receiving from their pets is the only pure love they may have ever experienced in their whole lives. And so, you know, I thought that was powerful. And then when I learned that they were choosing their pets, choosing the streets, no matter how rough, how tough, and how sick of it they were, over shelter, because shelters did not allow pets. And it's not that they don't want to, it's just that they don't have the proper support in order to allow pets. It's a whole different system. And so that stopped me. And then my second curiosity was like, okay, so if they're willing to choose their pets over anything, you know, to better themselves, what would they be willing to do if we supported them together? And so that's when I started Pals and Pets and approaching shelters and trying to develop, you know, a perfect system to address any and all barriers that would keep a shelter from allowing a person and their pets. And then when we entered, supported existing shelters, and shelter residents begin to enter, what we begin to experience is there's a difference when you're working with an individual's pets who they trust the most, right? Their pets are their whole world. Whether they know it or not, and most of them do know it, but their pets are healing them in ways they may not even be able to verbalize, but you can just tell by their own actions. And when they have all this other support and we approach them, and it's through their pets that we approach them. What does your pet need? We're going to get some vet services for your pet. Your pet's doing great. Wow, your pet's healthy. Wow, your pet's happy. You must be a good owner. You're doing the right thing, right? Then they start, their barriers drop. And it's not like you're talking to them. So, you know, it's not like, oh, you're kind of, excuse my language, bullshitting me. And they put this wall. It's like, oh, you're talking to my pet. And then they're receiving it, right? So it's, real beautiful, the relationship that we got to experience within the shelters. They were just a lot more trusting and open with us because of their pet and because we cared for their pet, and therefore they felt supported. So we saw a lot of transformation within themselves. They were more willing to allow us, because they developed trust with us, allow us to care for their pets so that they can go get medical care, so that they can go to the doctors, so that they can go get their license. Otherwise, if they wouldn't have developed that trust, they would have never done that. And then they were willing to take more suggestions, right? Because now they've opened up a little more trust. And it's magical to see the healing and the transformative. But we all know this, right? We don't have to be unsheltered to see this. Nowadays, we're choosing our pets over people naturally. We would rather, I hear from a lot of my friends, I'd rather stay in and watch a movie with my dog than go out with you. Or, on dating, it's I'm a dog mom or a cat mom, and if you're not into that, then forget it. Right.
Did you know that between 10 and 25% of the homeless population have pets? These loyal and loving friends can get sick and hungry, especially now as the winter nights begin to take hold. Your donations can provide a homeless pet with food and get them the emergency veterinary care they need so badly. Your donation can also provide them with crates in homeless shelters so that they can stay with their owners safe and warm during these cold winter nights. And here's the really amazing part. If you donate now, you can double your impact. This holiday season, the Dave and Cheryl Duffield Foundation will match all donations up to $75,000. Just make sure you donate before the end of the year to double your impact. Donate today to help a pet of the homeless, and your donation will be doubled at petsofthehomeless.org. We're kindred souls. We really are. I mean, everything that you have said, I wish I could have put in the same kind of wording. I love hearing your stories. So what about this book? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Pals and Pets, Who Saves Who is a children's book I wrote, actually was based on my first experience with Ray and Jane, and my perspective changed. And so at the time when I had this experience, soon after, I thought, well, a couple years after, I thought, is this real? Are people going to understand this? Is this even going to make a difference? And I thought to myself, I said, well, if it's easy enough for a child to understand, then it's easy enough to understand. That was my initial thought, that I thought was, why I developed this children book, Pals and Pets, hopefully getting the story out there. But I later came to realize that I was the child being told a story by my grandfather, each time I went to visit about his childhood. And now today, this is what I do. And so, my child's book, whether I knew it or not, was intended in hopes that some child or some person may be as receptive as I was to my own grandfather, and perhaps may have a little bit of a shift or a change or a different understanding. So perhaps the next time they may pass a person on the street, they'll give a kind eye, or maybe a kind gesture, or even a pat on the head. And really, it's as simple as that to make a big difference.
And where can people purchase this book?
It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
And it's Pals and Pets?
Yes, Pals and Pets.
Awesome. Awesome. Oh, and that's great. I am in awe of you to reach out to another whole generation of kids. We encourage children and classrooms to have pet food drives. And it's a way for the teacher to talk to these children about homelessness, but doing it through the pet makes it more meaningful to those children. So when you found out about us and our connection and what we offered, we ended up, there was a request from one of the homeless shelters in your area that we ended up sending 28 collapsible crates to that facility that became their property so that you could go on with your mission of helping people get into shelters. You want to expand on that a little bit?
I did. I reached out to Pets of the Homeless when we were going to assist our first shelter, which was here in Venice Beach, California. It was a 154 bed shelter with women and men and youth residents and pets, of course. And yeah, you guys assisted us with 28 crates, and it was actually delivered to us. And I got my dad, who his dad was my grandfather, on board. I put him to work, and we transferred all the crates to a nearby storage facility to our Venice shelter, and we used those crates for our shelter, and it was super helpful for that first 6 months, 6 to 8 months. We used those crates. We ended up having a total of 65 pets that year, which is great. And it was so helpful. It's so interesting how a lot of people don't realize that not only do individuals coming off the streets when they enter shelter need support to learn how to transition, but so do their pets, right? And there's been a few times where some of our sheltered residents are not comfortable with being separated with their pets, right? Or they have a certain idea like, oh, crates, I'm not going to put my dog in that because it's like jail. And it's just, it's so helpful to educate them that it's not jail. That's probably a place where they're coming from, or an experience that they're coming from, which is so beautiful at the same time, because this is how bonded they are with their pets. I feel like it's jail. I don't want my pet to feel like it's jail, right? So they have this really beautiful connection, and it was great to see that. But to be able to assist them, to educate them, to help them learn and say, no, it's like a child. It's like a child who has a bedroom. What do? You put a bed in there, you put their toys in there. Sometimes they get to eat in there. They play with their friends in there, right? And sometimes you discipline them in there, right? To curb some behaviors. So
It's a safe place. It's a safe place for these animals, dogs and cats, because what's going on around them in their environment may be hectic and confusing, and they're
mhm.
stressed. Putting them in that crate just calms them down. They may be resistant at first, but once they are familiar with it, they will go right into that crate and just be happy as clams in there because it's a safe place. But yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. A lot of people are against the crates. I mean, we see that a lot at wellness clinics when
hmm
we have them locally, and we have them across the country as well. But we always have crates available for maybe that dog that's a little too aggressive, or the dog that is shaking so much because there's too much going around. By putting them in a crate, and putting a blanket over it, it calms them down. Now I feel safe. Nothing's going to hurt me in here. And my mom or my dad is right here. I can smell them. I can feel them right next to my crate. So it's important. And when I first decided I wanted to have that as one of our programs for feeding pets of the homeless, it was because I saw too many people on the streets with their pets, and there were no place for them in these shelters. So by offering these crates, that was a way for me to try to solve that little part of the whole big issue of homelessness and their pets. So I'm just delighted to have been able to talk to you about all of this. And is there one last thing that you'd like to tell our audience before we end today? If there's anything that you didn't get to mention? I mean, your website will be on the podcast as well as your picture, and so everybody will know how to get in touch with you. So, but is there anything else?
Yeah. So, I mean, I get a lot of people asking, how do we help our unsheltered population? I'm sure you get this question all the time, Genevieve. And, what I've experienced, and I'm sure you have as well with unsheltered pet owners, is unsheltered pet owners receive a lot more positive interaction with people in our community because of their pets. I believe, they'll get food for their pets. They get, interaction. They communicate with their pets a lot more. And I feel like unsheltered pet owners have a higher chance of being more willing to change their lives around because of this positive interaction. And I think, one thing I believe in, and my response to community members who say, how can we help? Is it funding? Is it housing? Like, I've tried to get someone into housing and they're not willing to do so. And I truly believe it starts with a community perspective. And the community perspective is if every person or every other person or every 10th person who passed by an individual on the street and gave a kind eye or a kind gesture or just some time to listen, or if they ask for something, you give it to them without any conditions or any expectations, eventually that individual's barriers are going to drop down and they're going to be more willing to receive suggestions or trust and help. And the way I kind of like to simplify it is it's like a rock and wind blowing over it. A rock doesn't really change very often, but if the wind keeps blowing over and over and over, eventually the rock's going to change formation. And so I think it's as simple as that every person can do on a daily basis is just give a little positive love, because love has no expectations.
What a great metaphor. I love that. That is beautiful. As well, you are a beautiful young woman, and I am so proud to be working with you and partner with you any way we can. If one of your clients needs extra emergency veterinary care because of illness or injury, reach out to us as you have done in the past. We are here to help all of your clients as well. So with that, I want to thank you once again and wish everybody a happy day, and be safe and be healthy. Bye now.
Bye. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Give a Dog a Bone, brought to you by Feeding Pets of the Homeless. If you've enjoyed the show, help us by leaving us a 5-star review. It really helps new listeners find the show. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on social media and the web at petsofthehomeless.org. I've been your host, Genevieve. Until next time, thanks for listening.